Why, hello everybody, it's Histor-Tea Time! Hey Jesse, what day is it? Sit. It's D-Day. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another segment of Histor-Tea Time with your favorite historian, me, Miss Mullins. Okay, so today, as you saw by the very interesting intro with my dog, it's D-Day time. Alright, so this is the largest sea invasion in history. This is essentially the operation that changed the entirety of World War II. Now, one thing I want to set up for you is Hitler's Atlantic Wall. So from the end of 1941, Hitler ordered the construction of the Atlantic Wall, which is a military fortification that extends from the coast of France all the way up the entire coast till you hit Norway. So, follow my mouse, all of these little dots right here, all of this, these are all little military fortifications all up and down the entire coast, because this was their defense against any invasion, because they knew it was going to be against, it was going to be coming from Britain, because Britain was the only country that was fighting them at the time. So anyway, yes, so the Atlantic Wall was a military obstacle that was along the entire European coastline, and it was a system of interlocking bunkers with heavy naval guns, pillboxes, which are concrete guard posts with holes for guns to fire through. This was 3,000 miles long. Crazy. So, in mid-1942, Allies tried to invade the beaches, and 900 Canadian troops were killed and 2,000 were captured at Dieppe. Now, this was the first attempt to break the Atlantic Wall and reinvade Europe. The Dieppe raid was an absolute failure, and this showed how difficult beach invasions really were and how formidable the Nazi Atlantic Wall was. The British and Canadians knew they could not invade the beaches alone, so they called a lifeline. Do-do-do, ring ring. What's up, United States? So the U.S. currently was taking on the Japanese in the Pacific Theater. Remember, World War II was a two-theater war, so it was Pacific Theater and European Theater. After the failure of Dunkirk, Prime Minister of Britain, Winston Churchill, was not stoked about another beach invasion. However, at the Tehran conference, Stalin and FDR kind of coerced him into doing another beach invasion. So, are you ready? Historical moment. The Allies knew this type of operation was going to take immense communication and the mentality of Allied life preservation. So, this meant that they can't do something too risky, because if they successfully invade the beaches, they'll need enough forces to occupy and then take territory from the Nazis. So they can't just invade. They have to then take the territory and then beat the Nazis that are further inland and keep moving in. So, this is going to take a lot. So essentially, the Allies needed to locate the weakest point of the Atlantic Wall. Germans were actually suspecting the Allied attack to take place at the beach of Calais. Here's why. Calais is the shortest distance between England and France. Because this right here is the English Channel, okay? So as you can see, shortest distance, so the Germans thought that this made the most sense, and that's what they were going to do. Now, it's going to be Calais, duh. Okay, I'm sorry. Hitler suspecting invasion at point of Calais, he actually sends his most trusted and, in my opinion, ruthless SS general, General Rommel, to take control of the Atlantic Wall defense system. And the Germans were actually thrilled because of his reputation, so they were like, oh, if he's up there, there's no way we're going to lose. So he increases the defenses and laces the beaches with thousands of miles of barbed wire, and then up past the beaches is millions of landmines. However, Allies were sending spy planes to take photos of Rommel's new defenses, and so once they received these photos, they were also receiving intel from the French resistance, which was truly an amazing force. Because remember, France had surrendered at this time, but the citizens were still there. Just the government surrendered. But citizens were like, nah, man, screw the Nazis. So British military engineer Percy Hobart, he sees the obstacles of landmines and all these, barbed wire and everything, and he creates so many different types of things and weaponry in order to invade regardless of opposition. He created so many ridiculous tanks that they were actually called Hobart's Funnies because of their ridiculous appearance. But he created the crocodile, the crab, the swimming tank, and the bunker buster. So essentially, and this is Hobart right here. So essentially, these chains would like whip crazy, and they would rip up all of the landmines. So this was super useful. This one was like a flamethrower. This one was a swimming tank, and then this one it was so formidable it could bust through anything. Now, the British engineers also assembled a secret oil pipeline for fueling the tanks in the English Channel. They also assembled floating ports called mulberry ports. So all of this stuff was happening systematically, okay? Operation Overlord, which is what we call D-Day, was being planned for months, okay? Now, the main guy in charge, we have General Dwight Eisenhower. He was named the Supreme Allied Commander, so he was the head man in charge of all of the Allied military forces. So pretty much anybody that was an Allied force, he was making the plan for them. Allied forces were sent to bomb German radar towers along the entire French coast. They also bombed German supply routes and aimed to cripple the ability for the Germans to refuel and resupply their forces once the Allies attacked. So the hope for this was that they could successfully invade, and then the Germans, while they're getting bombarded, they can't call for help, and help can't come to them, even if they can manage to get help. So, because they take out all these roads, and they take out all the radar. So they don't even know an attack is coming. 2, they can't call for help. 3, if help should actually be in the area, it can't get to them anymore. So the beginning of all this prep work is for Operation Overlord, so it's intense. So I think I have this up here. Yes, I do. I worked so hard on this. I need you to appreciate this. So we have Allied deception and German disgrace. Deception, disgrace. Evil's as plain as that stash on Hitler's face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So, Allies created a fake radio message stating that they were going to launch a beach invasion at Calais. So, again, this is pretty awesome with their intel. Just like they did at Midway, where they created a fake radio transmission, they did it again. And so, because they knew that the Germans could probably intercept. The Germans were preparing, they were sending all these forces, they were sending so many things up to Calais to prep for the invasion. On the 5th of June, 1944, the eve of D-Day, bad weather actually stops the invasion and stalls the ships with thousands of soldiers stuck on board on really rough seas. So they were making them super seasick, and they were also sitting ducks. So if the Luftwaffe actually showed up, oh my god, that could have been bad. Now, the Allied air forces were dropping paratroopers behind enemy lines, right? We'll see. We'll come back to that later. On the 6th of June, 1944, today is the day. D-Day, baby. Are you ready? Hallowed historical moment. I know I didn't put it in there, but I think it's pretty obvious. The ships appear to be sailing towards Calais, but then, at a dramatic twist, they veer right and head for Normandy. The troops didn't even know they were heading for Normandy, okay? They wanted to keep this so covert, okay? A lot of soldiers, like veterans that survived, they were like, we were totally heading towards Calais, but then we just started heading towards Normandy. So this was a huge moment. The German forces could not gather themselves together in time to turn to Normandy. All the German forces were heading to Calais. No one suspected Normandy, because it was a big distance. It was like 40 miles across the English Channel to get there, whereas like it was a hop, skip, and a jump compared to in Calais. So anyway, more deception. A phantom army was created and led by U.S. General Patton. Now the Germans actually feared him more than like any general. He was a pretty good. He was known as Old Blood and Guts, so he was a pretty big deal. But they built fake army facilities, inflatable tanks, dummy artillery, and dummy jeeps and vehicles. So, are you ready? Hallowed historical moment. weeks leading up to the invasion, double agents were slowly building up the fake evidence for an invasion at Calais. So this is pretty insane. Germans actually no longer had any spies working for them in Britain. They had all been turned and swore allegiance to the Allies. So Hitler and the Nazi military, the SS, everyone, they had been completely duped and played for fools, because with our spies feeding them fake evidence and building up this attack for months, they were like, they were just kind of, it was like they were slowly putting stuff in the Germans' ears, like, oh yeah, Calais, here's some plans for that. It was crazy what they were doing. It was insane. It was amazing. So, morning of the longest day, as said by Rommel himself. In the early morning, the Allies sent a wave of air attacks, and while they suffered heavy casualties, unfortunately, enough paratroopers and pilots actually landed to create a force in the mainland. When within the mainland of Nazi-occupied France, German panzer divisions, they were tank divisions, they could not make an attack without the direct orders from Rommel or Hitler. Only them. Rommel was the dude in charge of, the Atlantic Wall, and the forces right there in inland. And, of course, Hitler was the supreme leader for all of the Axis military. Keep in mind, Hitler was still asleep, and Rommel was in Berlin celebrating his wife's birthday. He wasn't even in France. He was back in Germany. So Hitler and Rommel both believed that the bad weather from the previous day would actually last, therefore no invasion that they needed to worry about. But the weather changed in favor of the Allies. Hallowed historical moments. So there were 5 total beach landings along the Normandy coast. So we have 6:30. It was from 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. So it's a kind of a short window for all that happens, but that's kind of how it is in the military. A lot of operations, they could be pages and pages thick of plans and details, but they happen in like minutes. So the first section of the beach, which I do have hang on, I have a picture of in the slide somewhere. So we have Utah, which is it's invaded by the Americans. And this is the very first invasion. There are 6,000 soldiers sent, and only 100 Germans were actually there at that section of the beach to face them off. So it was a massive success. Very low casualty rates. Omaha. This was the second American invasion, and it didn't go very well. Everything that could go wrong on a beach invasion went wrong. It was an utter failure. There were 3,000 U.S. casualties because there were 1,000 Germans with super heavy artillery waiting for them. Eventually, though, we do take the beach, but it was a massive failure. Then we have Sword, which is the third invasion by the British. This was a success. We have Juno, which is a Canadian invasion. This was the fourth one, and they're very eager to avenge their fallen comrades from Dieppe, so this was a massive success. And then the fifth section of the beach of the invasion was by the British, which was Gold, and they sustained casualties, but success. Now they have to take the city which is closest to the beaches, which is Caen, which is the installation on mainland after the beach. I made a meme because, oh, were we invaded? He didn't know. So, anyway, I love memes. They're just so great. Okay, so at 9 a.m., 2 whole hours later, Hitler wakes up, and again, no one wanted to disturb him out of fear. But here's something crazy. Hallowed historical moment. Hitler is briefed that there's an oncoming invasion at Calais. But, wait a minute. Didn't the Allies just invade Normandy? That's right. More deception. Disgrace. It's so great. British pilots fly over to the German radar towers, and they actually use tinfoil that creates a frequency showing on the radar. So what they did, the best way to describe it, here we go. The British pilots are flying over the German radar towers, and then they drop tinfoil sheets, which creates this massive frequency on the radar, which shows a massive invasion. At least it's what it looks like on the radar. and it looks like a massive fleet is coming towards Calais. So, he was deceived again. So the Germans receive confirmation that the Allied troopers have landed in the mainland, far from Normandy. But they discover we dropped dummies, which were called Ruperts. These are like legit dolls, okay? These dummies were dropped multiple times way before the invasion, and the Germans discovered this, and so when the Allies sent real paratroopers on D-Day, the Germans believed them to be Ruperts, so they didn't do anything. They're like, oh, they're just dropping dolls again. So on D-Day, there were technically in total 10,000 Allied casualties. But I want you to keep in mind, casualty does not mean death. Casualty is wounded and killed, so just 10,000 soldiers were out of play for right now. But D-Day was a total success. 160,000 troops land and now are heading towards Caen. So here we go. Here's a good picture of the beaches. So all of this is Normandy, okay? This whole beach line is Normandy. And so the Americans invade here at Utah, here at Omaha, British are at Gold, Canadians are at Juneau, and British again is at Sword. This one, Omaha, is the one that like went miserably wrong, but they eventually move in. This right here, Caen, is the city that they're going to try and take, okay? Because this is the biggest installation, like the closest one that they have. So finally at 3 p.m. Mind you, the invasion started at 6:30 a.m. At 3 p.m., Hitler finally figures out that Calais was not the Allied target for invasion. So he diverts his troops toward Caen, and realized that the Allies need to capture that city because of the access to supply routes. So he knew that that had to be where they were going. However, Hitler receives info that the Allied paratroopers have landed at Lisieux. At least I think that's how you say that. So he splits up his forces, sending another half to the neighboring city, only to discover more Ruperts. So we're going here. We dropped fake paratroopers here. Hitler was told that there were troops going here and here. So he split his troops up in half. And so he sent a massive counterattack strike team, I guess. But they all go there, and by the time they get there, they're just dolls. Haha. So, the next target along the way to Caen is the Villers-Bocage. So here the Allies run into the very far superior German Tiger tanks. Tiger tanks were pretty intense. They were probably one of the best tanks at the time. We had Sherman tanks. They weren't that great. They had problems. However, for the Tiger tanks, they may have been superior to the Allied Sherman tanks, but when a Tiger tank is damaged, there is no network to repair them. Sherman tanks can be repaired on the go. So it's maybe not the best quality, but in the end, quantity outnumbered, because we had more that could, work. When the Allies arrive at Villers-Bocage, they find that the Germans had placed these Tiger tanks in civilian homes, and the Allies were ordered to send heavy artillery to destroy the entire city. The Allies at the time were not told, at least the soldiers, they weren't told that there were actually civilians in that city, so there were a lot of civilian casualties, and a lot of soldiers later on, when they found out, they were actually really torn up about it. They purposely were not told, because they knew that they wouldn't do it. Now, I know that sounds like a pretty harsh decision to make, but just remember the timing, everything. You cannot put your own views of today in a time frame back then, because it doesn't fit, right? That's the point of history. You learn from it, you don't repeat it in the future. On the 18th of July, 1944, Operation Goodwood, 7,000 bombs were sent into German military encampments and installation buildings. 1 week later, Americans launched Operation Cobra, launching bombs into St. Lo, an area to bomb German installations. After 7 weeks, the Allies finally take the city of Caen, and Allies push out the Germans. But there are 20,000 total French civilian casualties. That's a bad number. They were not part of the fight. So that's pretty sad. Now, Allies are relentlessly bombing German supply routes. The 7th Army tells Hitler they need 4,500 tons of supplies every day just to fight the Allies. Barely even a quarter of that gets to them. Germans realize that they cannot repair their tanks and they cannot stay at their location, so they leave on foot and abandon the Tiger tanks. Germans were forced to rely on horses for resupply, but since the horses were overworked, when they died, their bodies were just left in the streets. So the Allies actually came upon a lot of dead horses in the middle of the streets. It was really gross. Allies were actually incredibly mechanized compared to the Germans. Most people thought that the Germans were this incredibly mechanized industrial military that was just so far ahead of the curve, but they were actually still a pretty, for a good amount, they were still a horse-drawn army in a way. It's kind of weird. I mean, they had a lot of superior weapons. Like I said, the Tiger tanks, they had lots of far superior guns that made a beach invasion very, very scary, but they did rely a lot on horse-drawn supply. So essentially the Germans were bombed into submission. The Germans are pushed out of France. So 10,000 Germans are killed, 40,000 were captured. Germans are officially pushed out of France, and Germans were averaging about 6,000 casualties a day. On the 25th of August, 1944, Paris is liberated, and Allies are closing in and moving towards Germany. That is a big deal, okay? Not only are they taking all of France, but now they're getting ready to they're rescuing Europe, essentially. It's crazy. So it's a big deal. But I hope that you enjoyed this segment of Histor-Tea Time with me. It's a big deal. D-Day was such an amazing accomplishment. It was not only done by intelligence forces, it wasn't done just by soldiers, it wasn't just done by Air Force, it was everybody working together, and it was, the Navy, everyone came together. And it was insane how well this was pulled off. I mean, this was the largest invasion, ever. It's insane. So, there's a lot that could have gone wrong, but amazingly, things went so right. And so D-Day is such an important day. We can finally open up a Western front, and then this causes Germany to fight a two-front war. So now we have the Soviets coming in from the east, and we have the we have the Germans fighting them, and then we have the Allies coming in from the west. And now we're squeezing the Germans into a massive kessel, right? Like from the Battle of Stalingrad, a kill circle. So it's pretty good. Big turning point in the war. So anyways, we only have 3 more videos to go in the series. I hope that you enjoy this, and visit me again for another segment of Histor-Tea Time.